They say a mother's love is unconditional, but no one tells you what happens when that love is taken for granted. When the very people you gave your life to start treating you like a burden, like a mistake they're too embarrassed to admit. I was 60 when my son looked me in the eye and, without saying it outright, told me I didn't matter anymore. But before I ever became the woman with a secret fortune, before the so-called revenge story unfolded, I was just a mother who gave everything, and I mean everything, to a boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street and now wouldn't even make room for me in his life. My name is Helen Margaret Whitlow. Friends just call me Helen. I never wanted much from life. Peace, a garden, and the sound of someone I loved calling me home for dinner. I was a nurse for over 20 years, a job that taught me two things: how to endure pain and how to hide it. After my husband died when I was 42, it was just me and my boy, Derek. I remember looking at him that day at the funeral, just 13 years old, trying to act grown, hiding tears like he thought he had to be the man of the house. I promised myself I'd carry everything if it meant he could still be a child. And I did. Lord, I did. I worked nights, weekends, holidays. If someone offered extra hours, I took them. I gave up sleep and holidays and friends and dates. Every penny I earned went to Derek. When he got sick in college and we didn't have insurance to cover the tests, I sold my grandmother's ring. When he wanted to study out of state, I cashed out the savings bonds my late husband left me. There were no complaints. I'd always believed that when you love your child, you don't count the cost. When I hit my mid-50s, I left the hospital and started working as a private caregiver for a woman named Eileen St. James. She was wealthy, elegant, and surprisingly kind. She'd outlived 3 husbands and had no children of her own. Over the years, our relationship turned into something more like friendship. She trusted me, shared stories, asked about my son. I made $8,000 a month, plus benefits, and for the first time in my life, I felt secure. Not rich, but safe. Derek had just gotten engaged to Cassandra when I started the job. She was beautiful, bright, and born into a family that never had to think about coupons or clearance racks. At first, I was happy for him, until the wedding planning began. Suddenly, nothing I did was good enough. My dress was a little too plain, my voice a little too loud, and the money I contributed already expected. But I smiled through it. I paid for half the wedding, bought them new kitchen appliances, even helped cover their down payment. I told myself that once the stress passed, things would feel more normal. They never did. Cassie's family, especially her mother, Dolores, treated me like the hired help. Polite in public, cold in private. At Thanksgiving, I cooked the turkey and was told, "Next year, let the caterer handle it." When their first home needed new windows, I offered to chip in, and Dolores said, "Oh no, Helen, you've done enough already," in that tone that meant I'd never been enough to begin with. Still, I tried. I showed up. I babysat her niece. I offered to help with anything and everything, because I thought that's what family did. When Cassie got pregnant, they asked me to move in for a while. It was presented like a favor to me. "We'd love to have you close." But deep down, I knew. They wanted a live-in helper. Still, I said yes. I moved into their guest room, kept quiet, did the laundry, made dinner when they were too tired. I didn't complain. That's just what mothers do, right? Then one day, I came home from work and found Cassie and her mother whispering in the kitchen. They went quiet the second I stepped in. I didn't ask. A few weeks later, Eileen passed away in her sleep. I stayed with her until the paramedics came, held her hand, called her lawyer, then packed my things and returned to Derek's house, suitcase in hand, ready to tell them the news. I thought they'd understand. I'd just lost someone who meant something to me. I thought they'd hug me, tell me it was okay, ask how I was doing. Instead, Derek looked at my suitcase like it was dripping mud on his white carpet. "You quit?" he said. His voice wasn't confused. It was sharp, accusatory. "Why would you quit that job?" "I didn't quit," I said quietly. "She passed away." He paused, blinked, then said, "Well, what are you going to do now?" That was it. No hug, no condolence, just concern about the money. I told him I needed time to think, that I might take a break before looking for something new. Cassie walked in, arms crossed. Must be nice, she said. Some of us don't have the luxury of time. I laughed, a soft, bitter thing I hadn't meant to let out. I haven't had a vacation in 20 years. Derek leaned against the counter, arms folded. We can't carry your expenses, Mom. The mortgage, groceries, everything's gone up. You'll need to find something soon. You're in good health. I looked at my son. Really looked. And for the first time, I realized something painful. He wasn't talking to me like a son talking to his mother. He was talking to me like a man talking to a financial burden he regretted accepting. That night, lying in the guest bed, I stared at the ceiling for hours. My back ached. My chest burned. Not from grief, though I was grieving, but from something sharper. The realization that I wasn't seen as a mother or even a person. Just a source, a convenience, a line on a spreadsheet. I remembered Eileen once telling me years before, money doesn't change people, Helen, it reveals them. I hadn't told Derek yet about the trust fund Eileen left me. $8 million, all in my name, no strings, because she saw my value when even my own family didn't. But now I was starting to see it too. And for the first time in my life, I asked myself a question I never thought I'd have to. What would it look like if I stopped trying to be their mother and started choosing to be my own woman? I didn't know the answer yet, but something deep inside me had already started to shift. The next morning started the same way most did in that house, with silence. I'd gotten used to moving quietly, making coffee before anyone stirred, folding blankets that weren't mine, pretending I wasn't a guest in the home I partially paid for. Derek came into the kitchen still in his undershirt, scrolling through his phone like I wasn't there. Morning, I said. He barely looked up. Hey. I poured him a cup of coffee, just like I had for the past few months. He took it without a word. And that tiny moment was when I realized just how far I disappeared in his life. I used to be the whole world to him. Now I was just the woman who happened to know how he liked his coffee. Black with a splash of oat milk, no sugar. I waited until he sat down before speaking. Derek, I said, I wanted to talk to you about something. He didn't look up. What now? I'm not going back to work. His fingers froze mid-scroll. Slowly, he looked up, eyes narrowing. What? I've decided I'm retiring, I said, keeping my voice steady. I've worked for almost 40 years. I want time to rest. He let out a sharp laugh, one that didn't reach his eyes. Retiring from what? You're a private caregiver, not a CEO. I felt that like a slap. From behind him, Cassie entered the kitchen, wearing a robe that probably cost more than my car. She looked me up and down with that same condescending smirk I'd grown used to. Retiring, she repeated, chuckling. You don't even have a pension. What exactly are you retiring from, Helen? I've earned my rest, I said quietly. I gave up everything for this family. I've worked every day of my adult life. Cassie scoffed. So have we, but we're not running off to play retired princess. Then her mother's voice, Dolores, cut through the air from the hallway. She must have overheard everything. You know, Helen, she said, stepping in like she lived there, there's a lovely senior community nearby. They're always hiring kitchen help. You'd have your own room, your own space, and you'd still be useful. There it was. The word stung more than I expected, because that's all I'd become to them. Useful. Not loved, not appreciated, not family, just a tool. And now that I wasn't producing money, I was no longer useful. I looked at my son, my boy, the child I'd held through fevers, who clung to my hand at the dentist, who once cried when he thought I was mad at him for breaking a vase. Now he was silent, cold. Cassie walked toward the fridge, tossing her words like they were casual conversation. You'll still be covering the nanny and postpartum nurse, right? I mean, if you're not working anymore, the least you can do is help where it matters. I blinked. Excuse me? Derek jumped in, voice tight but rehearsed. Come on, Mom, you know we're under pressure here. It's not a good time for you to... What, retire? I've supported you both financially for years, I said, the bitterness creeping in now. I bought this house, paid your tuition, your wedding, your medical bills. I gave everything I had. And now you want to bail? Cassie snapped. You're acting like a victim. Nobody asked you to do all that. I looked at her like I was seeing her for the first time, and maybe I was. I didn't do it because you asked, I said. I did it because I loved you, because that's what a mother does. Dolores crossed her arms. Well, maybe you loved a little too much. Now look what's left. No plan, no money, and clearly no gratitude. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry, but mostly I wanted to leave, to run, to vanish into some version of myself where none of this ever happened. I'm 60, I said softly. I've earned the right to stop. Cassie rolled her eyes. You don't get to just stop. You're not entitled to anything. Derek added, we need your help now more than ever. We're trying to start a family. This isn't just about you. You still have energy. You can work for another 20 years. Easy. I stared at him. 20 years? That's when it clicked. It wasn't just about me losing a job. It was about me losing value. They hadn't brought me here to help raise a grandchild. They brought me here to work, to earn, to keep the machine going. And now that I wasn't producing, I was expendable. I took a deep breath. I'm retiring. That's final. Derek shook his head. You're being emotional. You'll regret this. Cassie said, don't expect us to carry you. We can't afford that. I gave a small smile. You don't have to. You never really did. Then Derek did something I'll never forget. He pulled out his phone and started dialing. I'm calling the director at Briarwood, he said. They're short on kitchen staff. I'll tell them you're available. I stood frozen, heart pounding. He was outsourcing his own mother like a temp worker. You think sending your mother to scrub floors in a nursing home is acceptable? I asked. He didn't even look up. Be realistic, Mom. You've always said you wanted independence. This is independence. And right there, something broke in me. Quietly, cleanly. Not loud, not dramatic, just a stillness I hadn't felt in years. You know, if you're still watching, I wonder, have you ever been treated like a burden by the people you gave everything to? Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone you raised and realized they only see you as useful when you're profitable? If this is hitting close to home, let me know. You're not alone. Trust me. I picked up my suitcase, the same one I'd brought back the night before, only now I wasn't unpacking. I was leaving. Cassie muttered something under her breath. Drama queen. I ignored her. Dolores stepped in front of the door. You're his mother. You're responsible for his future. You can't just walk away. I looked her dead in the eye. Responsible? I've sacrificed everything, my marriage, my body, my health for this boy. What else do you want, my dignity? Cassie barked a laugh. You raised him. Now you want to wash your hands of it? That's selfish. I almost laughed. The audacity. You want to talk about selfish? I said. Try using someone for 30 years and acting like they owe you. And then Derek said the words that would echo in my head for months. You owe me for life. That's when I realized I didn't. I never did. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. For the first time in a long time, I walked away. Not because I was weak, but because I finally knew my worth. And that was the moment everything changed. I didn't cry when I left the house. You'd think I would after everything I'd given them, my body, my health, my entire life. But I didn't. Not when I stood at the curb with my suitcase. Not when I called a cab. Not even when I saw my reflection in the window of the hotel lobby and realized I looked exactly like what they thought I was, an aging, broke woman with nowhere left to go. But what they didn't know, what they never stopped to consider, was that I had something they couldn't touch, something they thought I'd never have, power. And it came in the form of an envelope waiting at the front desk of the Oakmont Hotel, addressed in gold script with a return label from the law offices of Bennett and Gray. Inside was a copy of Eileen's will and the documents for the trust she'd created in my name. $8 million, not in stocks, not in company shares, in liquid, transferable, no strings attached assets. The kind of money that people like Cassie and Dolores whispered about at brunch while sipping mimosas, assuming someone like me could never understand. I sat down on the plush hotel bed that night and stared at the ceiling for a long, long time. I wasn't thinking about what I'd buy or where I'd go. I was thinking about why it had taken me so long to walk away, and the truth was hard to swallow, because deep down, I kept hoping they'd change. I kept thinking if I gave more, loved harder, worked longer, they'd finally look at me and say, "Thank you, Mom." But they never did, and they never would. For days, I stayed in that hotel pretending I was figuring things out. In reality, I was grieving, not a person, a role. The role of mother as I'd known it. Because once you see that your child doesn't actually see you, doesn't respect you, doesn't love you the way you thought they did, something inside you dies. Quietly, but completely. I didn't answer Derek's texts. There weren't many anyway, just a few cold one-liners about figuring things out and give us a heads up when you get settled. No apology, no concern. Not a single question about where I was staying or how I was feeling. They didn't miss me. They missed my labor. One afternoon, I walked past a real estate office downtown. Inside, glossy pictures of villas and high-rise condos gleamed on backlit panels. Something stirred in me, something small but steady. I stepped inside and was greeted by a young woman with a clipboard and a professional smile. "Looking for a home?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "But not just any home." She raised a brow. "What kind of place are you looking for?" "One with thick walls," I said, smiling. I'm tired of hearing people talk like I'm not there. I visited 5 properties in 2 days, all of them beautiful. None of them felt right, until I arrived at the Ridge at Cedar Heights. Gated drive, tree-lined streets, a fountain in the center of the roundabout that sparkled in the afternoon sun like something out of a dream. As I stepped into the sales office, I recognized her immediately. Roxanne Mathers, Dolores's niece, Cassie's cousin, all lip gloss and silk scarf, flipping through a brochure with one perfectly manicured nail. She didn't recognize me at first. I wasn't in my worn scrubs or carrying groceries. I wore a simple navy coat and a firm expression. Then the flicker crossed her face, the half-second of realization. "Helen Whitlow?" she said, blinking in disbelief. I smiled. "That's right." She let out a small laugh, the fake kind people use when they're uncomfortable. Wow, I didn't expect to see you here. These homes start at $3.5 million, you know." I nodded. "I know." Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, like she was trying to find the punchline. "Are you here to see someone?" "No," I said. "I'm here to buy." She laughed, then stopped. "You're serious?" "As a heart attack." She hesitated. "Well, we usually require proof of funds before." I pulled out my phone, opened the app, held up the screen. She froze. Her face paled. $8 million. The room went quiet. The receptionist stopped typing. Someone behind her gasped audibly. I leaned in just enough for her to hear. "I'm not here for snacks, Roxanne. I'm here to change my life." She scrambled, offering to show me the model home herself, but I shook my head. "Get someone else," I said. "You didn't treat me with respect when you thought I had nothing. I don't reward that kind of behavior." A different agent, a man named Peter, gave me the tour. He was kind, quiet, treated me like a person, not a punchline. I signed the papers that evening. Full amount, no mortgage, no financing, cash. That night, as I sat in my new home, boxes still unopened, city lights glowing through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, I thought about everything I'd lost, my role, my home, my family. But here's the thing about grief. It only lingers when you keep hoping for what could have been. I wasn't hoping anymore. I was done waiting for apologies. I was done explaining my worth. And for the first time in decades, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Not joy, not pride. Something deeper. Peace. And I didn't need anyone else to give it to me. I'd earned it. On my knees, on my feet, in silence, in sacrifice. I'd paid for it with my youth, my health, my marriage, my identity. This wasn't just a house. It was proof that I had not been erased. And no matter what came next, they'd never be able to take that from me again. It's a strange thing, realizing that you've been invisible in your own life, that you spent decades pouring love into a cup that had a hole in the bottom. You keep filling it, thinking someday it'll be enough. Then one day, you stop, and the silence that follows, that quiet, it's not loneliness, it's peace. It's finally understanding that their emptiness was never yours to fix. After I bought the house, I didn't tell a soul. Not the neighbors, not old friends, not even Monica, the young woman at the front desk who had been the only person to treat me with respect since I walked into that real estate office. The silence was delicious. For once, I wasn't a mother, a housekeeper, a burden, or a background character in someone else's story. I was just Helen. And that was more than enough. I spent the first week in my new home walking barefoot across the hardwood floors, listening to the way the rooms echoed without voices, asking me for money or meals or favors. I filled the kitchen with sunflowers, lit vanilla candles in every room, and let the stillness fill me. I ate breakfast on the sunroom patio, drank my coffee while the birds chattered in the trees, and didn't answer a single call. But of course, the silence never lasts. Not when people like Derek realize they've lost their grip. It started small. A voicemail. "Hey, Mom, just wondering where you are. Cassie's asking about the hospital bills. You're still handling that, right?" I didn't reply. Then a text. "You okay? I heard you might have gotten a check from Mrs. St. James. Let's talk?" Still nothing from me. Then came the one that told me everything I needed to know. "It's not right to keep secrets from your own family, Mom." That was it. That word again, family, used like a crowbar, not a comfort. They didn't miss me. They missed access. And the final confirmation came when a friend of mine, someone from the nursing days, called and said, "Did you see what Derek posted?" I hadn't, but I looked. And there it was, a brand new live stream channel. My son's face, soft lighting, soft voice, eyes heavy with false pain. "My mother left me," he told the camera, "after everything I did for her. I let her into my home, gave her a room, and the second she didn't have to work anymore, she vanished. No goodbye, no explanation. Just gone." He sniffled, literally sniffled. "She never appreciated me," he said, "and now she's got money and I don't even exist." There were hearts floating across the screen, comments pouring in. "She sounds heartless." "Poor you. What kind of mom does that? You're better off without her." And there it was. He was crafting a narrative. Not for healing, not for honesty, for sympathy, for donations, for a new angle on the same manipulation. But I didn't flinch. I watched, one eyebrow raised as he started hawking merch. Hoodies with lines like, "All I wanted was her love. $29.95 plus shipping." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened a new tab, signed up for the same platform, created a new channel. Title, "The Woman He Says Abandoned Him." No description, no picture, just a single scheduled stream. Tonight, 8 p.m. And when the time came, I didn't light anything fancy. I didn't wear makeup or stage the room. I sat at my kitchen table, the marble one Derek never saw, under the soft pendant lights I'd picked out myself. I clicked Go Live. Thousands joined within minutes. I didn't smile. I didn't perform. I spoke. My name is Helen Margaret Whitlow, and if you're watching this, you've probably heard a version of me that doesn't quite match reality. I told my story the way it happened. The hours, the sacrifices, the mortgage, the tuition, the missed vacations, missed meals, missed sleep. I showed receipts, screenshots, legal documents, even Eileen's will. Then I paused. I reached for a folder and pulled out the notarized adoption certificate. I adopted Derek when he was 1 year old. He doesn't share my blood, but he shared my name, my home, my life. I loved him as if he were my own. The comment section froze. Question marks. Shock. He was born with a heart defect, abandoned, left to die. I paid for the surgery. I worked double shifts to keep us afloat. And not once did I hold that over his head. Another pause. And now that I've stopped giving, he's decided I never gave enough. I leaned forward. No one abandons their child, but a child can abandon their mother long before they pack her bags. I ended the stream there. No dramatic mic drop, no tears, just the truth. And the truth echoed for days. The internet flipped. Comments flooded in. She saved his life. He lied to all of us. She deserves peace. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not vindicated, not victorious. Clear. A woman who had been erased finally carving her name into the stone. But more than anything, I felt done. Not with my life, with his. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want him ruined. I just wanted the silence to be mine this time. Earned, owned, lived in, and that's when I realized this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. For once, the story wasn't about being a mother who gave everything. It was about being a woman who finally kept something for herself. After the live stream, I thought I'd feel a rush. Vindication. Power. Maybe even a little smugness. But I didn't. I felt tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from staying up too late or lifting heavy boxes. No, this was a tiredness that had lived in my bones for years. Decades, maybe. The kind of tired you only notice after you've stopped carrying something too heavy for too long. So I rested. And by rest, I don't mean I lay around in silk robes sipping champagne. I mean, I let myself breathe. I stopped apologizing for the quiet. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for a message that said, "I'm sorry." It never came, and I stopped expecting it. That alone was a kind of freedom I'd never known. I planted a garden in the backyard of my new home. Tomatoes, basil, lavender, nothing fancy, just life that grew because I chose to care for it, not because anyone needed it from me. Some mornings I'd walk outside barefoot just to feel the dew between my toes. The sunlight didn't ask anything of me. It just showed up, warm and quiet and soft. I signed up for a painting class at the community center. Acrylics, landscapes mostly. I was terrible at it. Absolutely terrible. But there was something beautiful about creating something just because I wanted to. Not because it served a purpose or someone else needed it. Just for me. One afternoon, a woman named Janet, maybe in her early 70s, sat down next to me in class. She had that look, soft curls, kind eyes, and a quiet sadness just beneath the surface. "I saw your video," she said, dipping her brush in blue paint. "The one about your son." I froze for a second, brush midair. Then I nodded. "Yeah, that one." She smiled, but not in a gloating way. It helped me walk away from my daughter. I set my brush down. "Really?" Janet nodded. She used to call me when she needed money, babysitting, or a clean house. But the second I said no, she told me I was being dramatic, that I was just old and bored. Her voice cracked, but she cleared it quickly. "Your words reminded me that love doesn't mean servitude." I didn't know what to say, so I said the only true thing I could. "Thank you." That night, I sat on my patio with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the sun dip low behind the mountains, and I realized something that made my heart ache and feel full at the same time. I wasn't just healing, I was helping others heal too. That's the quiet part they don't talk about. How grief and betrayal shape you in silence. How recovery isn't always loud or triumphant. Sometimes it's just choosing not to answer a call. Choosing not to beg for kindness. Choosing to put yourself first and letting that be enough. Cassie tried calling once. Just once. No voicemail. I didn't pick up. Maybe she wanted to yell. Maybe she wanted to apologize. Maybe she wanted to explain. But I didn't need any of those things anymore. Derek never reached out again. Instead, I heard about them through other people. A friend who ran into Cassie's mother at a pharmacy said they were downsizing. Something about debt. About Derek losing his job after someone leaked some screenshots. Apparently, sympathy doesn't pay the mortgage. And here's the thing. I didn't smile. I didn't smirk. I didn't feel joy in their struggle. I just felt separate. Like I was finally living a life that no longer required their validation or their failure for me to feel whole. I hired a lawyer, not to sue, not to fight, just to quietly restructure my will. I donated half of Eileen's trust to a women's foundation focused on elderly care and single mothers. The rest I set aside for a scholarship fund under Eileen's name. And yes, I made sure nothing went to Derek, not because I hated him, but because I finally understood. You don't reward cruelty with inheritance. You don't fund your own erasure. Sometimes people ask me, would you ever take him back? If he came, really apologized. And the truth? I don't know. Not because I'm bitter, because I'm finally busy. Busy living, busy enjoying silence, busy becoming someone I never thought I'd get the chance to be, a woman who belongs to herself. A few months later, I stood in my garden, pulling weeds and humming an old Sam Cooke song when I heard the gate open. It was the mailman. "Morning, Ms. Whitlow," he said. "You've got a letter, hand-delivered." It was from the city. Inside was an invitation to speak at a community event. They'd seen my video. They wanted me to talk about dignity, aging, and starting over. I laughed. Me? Speak? But something in me whispered, why not? So I did. That weekend, I stood on a small stage in front of 50 strangers, most of them women with eyes like mine, weathered, tired, but not defeated. And I told them the truth, that sometimes the people you love the most will treat you the worst, that you'll give until there's nothing left, and they'll still ask for more, that you'll feel invisible. But that's not the end. Because one day you'll remember you're still here, still breathing, still worthy, and when that day comes, you won't need applause, just space, and a little bit of light. That's all it takes to start again. 6 months passed. The garden was in full bloom now. Lavender buzzed with bees, tomatoes ripened on the vine, and the rosemary bushes had gotten fat and fragrant by the back fence. Every morning, I'd make coffee and walk barefoot out onto the patio, breathing in the stillness like a woman finally allowed to exist without explanation. I didn't hear from Derek again, not directly anyway. But one afternoon, as I was clipping basil for dinner, I noticed a familiar figure outside the gate, just standing there. He hadn't changed much, a little thinner maybe, a little tired around the eyes, still dressed in clothes that looked nice but didn't sit right on him anymore. Like he was still trying to wear a life that didn't fit. I didn't go to the gate. I didn't wave. I just stood in my garden and watched. He stayed there a few minutes, looked at the house, looked at me. He didn't call out, didn't ask to come in, just looked. Then he turned and walked away. And you know what? That was enough. Because in his silence, I heard something louder than any apology he could have given. He finally knew what he lost. There was no grand scene, no begging, no slow-motion tearful hug on the lawn, just recognition. And I didn't need anything more than that. A week later, I got a card in the mail. No return address, just my name in handwriting I hadn't seen in a long time. Inside was a simple message. I saw you. I know what I did. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know I finally understand. I folded the card and tucked it away in a drawer, not because it changed anything, but because it proved that even the ones who pretend they don't see you eventually do. That's the thing they never teach you about motherhood, especially the kind of motherhood where you give too much. You think your worth is measured by how much they need you, but the real power comes when they realize they can't replace you, and you've already stopped needing them to notice. Life kept moving. I finished my painting class. My final project was a landscape of the view from my garden, the rosemary, the fence, the light hitting the stone path just so. It wasn't good, not technically, but it was mine. And when the class had their little end-of-session showcase, I stood beside it proudly, because it told a story no one else had to understand. I started volunteering at the library downtown. Nothing big. Just reading to kids on Thursdays and helping other older women set up their phones. Every once in a while, one of them would whisper, "Are you the Helen from that video?" And I'd smile and say, "Yes, but I'm just Helen now." And that was the truth. I no longer needed a title, mother, caregiver, martyr, to feel real. I had built a life that didn't require recognition to matter. Still, little things happened here and there. At the grocery store, I once ran into Dolores. She was standing in the clearance aisle, arguing with a young cashier about expired coupons. When she saw me, her face went white. She opened her mouth to speak, but I just nodded politely, pushed my cart past, and kept walking. Because what would I say? That I forgave her? Maybe. But some things don't need words. Some things are forgiven simply by being left behind. One afternoon, I got a call from the community center. Ms. Whitlow, the director said, we're starting a mentorship group for women over 60. We'd love for you to lead it. I laughed. What on earth would I mentor people on? Starting over, she said, learning how to stop apologizing, and maybe how to be okay with being seen again. I said yes, not because I had all the answers, but because I finally knew what the right questions were. And if just one woman heard my story and thought, maybe I'm not broken, maybe I'm just beginning, then it would be worth it. The truth is, I didn't win anything, not in the traditional sense. I didn't get revenge, I didn't get a headline, I didn't even get an apology I could frame and hang on the wall. What I got was something smaller, something quieter. I got myself back, not the mother, not the martyr, not the giver, just the woman, just me. If you're still here, maybe this story touched something in you. Maybe you've given more than you should. Maybe you've been made to feel invisible too. If you've ever been treated like you were just a chore, a wallet, a body in the kitchen, please know this: you're not alone. And you're not wrong for wanting peace. I'd love to hear from you. Did this story feel familiar? Have you ever had to quietly walk away to find yourself again? Share your thoughts in the comments. Not because I need the likes, but because someone else might need to know they're not the only one going through it. We're not forgotten. We're just rising quietly. And that, my friend, is the most powerful kind of ending there is.